What's up, everybody? J Heat SportsMedia coming at y'all again with that fire as always, spitting the hot topics and getting the sports conversation started. Y'all know what I'm talking about: football, basketball, and boxing. Want to get into some basketball in the NBA. There's been a scoring surge this season. It's been a lot of talk about it on ESPN and various other channels. Fox Sports 1 as well. Saw Woj on ESPN talking about how the rules have benefited, and the NBA basically has put it in such a way where they've designed the rules to encourage scoring. This is talked about a lot, and it's been talked about not just this year, but for years now. I'd say going back 7-8 years, people talk about how the rules make it easier to score for the NBA players. This is a consistent thing, and I just want to talk about a little bit of, is it really just the rules, or is it a little more to it? Let's get into it. So, as I was saying, this scoring surge in the NBA has been getting talked about a lot. Woj was on ESPN, Jalen Rose on his show as well, talking about the fact that how the rules which have aided in more freedom of movement, analytics which have surged over the years and become more and more popular amongst teams, have encouraged more three-point shooting. Threes and layups, as they say, kind of eliminating the mid-range game from a general perspective. Also on the defensive end, not being allowed to really get up in guys as much as they did, say, in the 80s and the 90s. Because of this, it encourages more offense, which the NBA feels is what fans want to see. High-scoring games, more excitement. So, my big thing is this true? I would say in some respects, yes. However, the problem I have, and I've had for quite some time, is this, what seems like this situation we have with the older generation, and even older generation, when I'm talking about players, analysts, complete, like, it's not just about the players, but in general, people are pushing this narrative that the rules and analytics are the reason why scoring is up, and because of that, it's a less quality of NBA and basketball that we're seeing out there based on all of this stuff. And to me, it's disrespectful to the game. It's disrespectful to the players that came before, really. And those are the players sometimes I see, guys from the 80s and 90s, early 2000s guys, at least some of them, that push this narrative and make it seem as though these guys got it so easy and it was so hard back in my day, and really these guys aren't as good per se as they were in my day, meaning the 80s and 90s, and really they're just benefiting from league changes to rules. And it would be different if these explanations were given with some sort of caveat or some sort of explanation into a little bit of a deeper dive, more thinking into the situation, but it's not. It's just all about the rules consistently. And I have a problem with that because the talent in the league, in my opinion, is at an all-time high. And I think it factors in. And I think you disrespect the talent level of these guys, the time and the hard work they put into their craft, the fact that now kids coming up have access to more resources when it comes to training, conditioning, diet, weight training as well, the amount of exposure they get, and the level of competition they get to play against at an early age, being able to be on all these AAU circuits and things like that. These guys get to play against guys in other states across the country at an earlier age than maybe they would have the further you go back in time. And I think all of this is aided for the modern day player to have evolved over the years and be athletic wise and talent and skill wise at a higher level across the board than it's ever been. That does not mean that guys there weren't exceptions to the rule back in the day. I'm not saying there's not guys back in the day that could have played now and maybe flourished. When they say, Michael Jordan or Shaquille O'Neal and other big names, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, could they have taken advantage in this time and this day and age and been superstars in this league? And maybe even, as Jalen Rose put it, their numbers would be on steroids. Maybe that's the case. That very well could be the case. But what they don't say often enough for me is that these guys in today's NBA, put them back during that time, even with those rules, and maybe because of their athletic superiority, their talent superiority and skills, they would flourish. Maybe you've heard of the comparison before that they've used with Steph Curry, where they compare Steph Curry to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Now, don't get me wrong, Mahmoud was a heck of a ball player. But to compare Steph Curry and say that's who he would have been like back then, to me is extremely disrespectful to Steph Curry, the two-time league MVP, once unanimous MVP of the league. To say he would have been, in some respects, just a guy, because Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, although he was a starter, he was a great player. He wasn't a perennial every year all-star. He definitely wasn't considered the best person in the league at any point in time, or even top 5 player in the NBA. That's Steph Curry, and that's what we relegate him to, in all due respect to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, when we make that comparison as well. That's what Steph Curry would have been like back then. How about we say things like, well, what if Steph Curry played back then and he's pulling up from 40 feet, 35 feet, hitting threes at a 40% clip, sometimes 45% clip? How would they react to that? I'll tell you how they would react. They'd have to come out and guard him. And if they came out and guarded him, because they weren't hand checking and getting physical 35 feet out back in the 80s and 90s, not consistently at least. And if they came out there, that would open up the floor. Steph could boogie around him, and it would open up the floor for his players to be able to get open spacing in the mid-range and to the basket for layups. Kind of like what he's done in today's age, changing and revolutionizing the game. So he'd have did it then too, in my opinion. And to think that these guys can't adjust to physicality, like coming up playing ball, they ain't never played in no games where they've gotten roughed up or there was no fouls being called in pickup games and such against high competition, is just, to me, naive to think. Steph Curry could have dominated back then. A guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo. Let's make a comparison of a guy who was similar to him, wiry, long, about 6'10", 6'11", could jump out the gym, Shawn Kemp. Shawn Kemp wasn't running the floor quite like Giannis with the ball in his hand, going 94 feet, seeing the floor like a point guard, and going coast to coast in 3, maybe 4 steps, and he's yamming on. They didn't see that in the 80s, and Giannis is physical enough and strong enough to take contact to the rack and finish strong. He would have guys in foul trouble back then because they would be trying to be physical. And on top of that, he would also, since he's starting to hit his free throws around 70% or more, he would be putting guys out of the game while scoring. So LeBron James, same factor. Kevin Durant, they ain't seen no guy 7 feet tall pulling up from 3 like that. So I want to hear more of that and congratulate these guys and pick these guys up in this generation like the current guys do when they see the new generation come in. They're better at that now. But the older generation, this narrative that they push about the rules and not mentioning the talent level and how it's increased, just all the focus being on the rules, to me, again, is disrespectful to those guys. And if you go look at the points per game throughout NBA history, meaning across the league, what the league average was, points per game, if it was really about the rules, then these recent years would be the highest scoring years we've seen, but that's not the case. Now, in the last 5 years, there's been a scoring surge. When you go back, 2023, 22, 21, 20, 19, those 5 years are up high in the top 20. But other than those years, and coincidentally, those years are where we've had a boom of talent in the league. Coincidentally, if you look, you go back further than that and it doesn't keep going. Actually, the 80s, a time where it was more physical, where you were getting clothesline going to the cup, where the bad boy Pistons, the Celtics, who the bad boy Pistons learned from, the Philadelphia 76ers, who could get rough. A lot of teams back then was way more physical, and yet points were up then more than the 90s or the early 2000s, where coincidentally, in my opinion, across the board, talent wasn't quite as high as it was in the 80s or as it is right now. So you got to factor that in when you make these arguments and not just make it black and white, but some more nuance to it. There's more gray in there. There's more to think about. So I just want to leave that food for thought for people and really think about it. Is it only the rules, or is it safe to say there's a combination of rules have had some aid in it, but also talent level is at an all-time high, and we should celebrate that talent because basketball is in a good place right now. Holla. All right, that's all the time I got. Y'all know what it is, and you know what you're looking for. J-Heat, Sports Media. Remember to like, subscribe, or hit the bell. Get in the comments. Let's go back and forth. YouTube is definitely the place to catch me, but I'm on Instagram as well, at The Vault JMU414 on Twitter. And of course, what's up, TikTok? Holla at y'all next time.